Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name is Tony Schwartz, and I'm the Director of Business Development here at Phamakon Pharmaceuticals. I'm here with Jason Prokopic, Pharmakon COO, and Mark Westerman from Marketing LLC, an independent consulting firm. Unfortunately, Bob Lennon will not be able to join us today because he is recovering from a recent surgery. I'd like to start with a couple housekeeping items. First of all, we'll mute all lines and we'll open them back up during the question and answer session. Feel free to write your questions in the question area on your screen or simply ask them during the question and answer session. We'll address all the written and verbal questions throughout and any remainders at the end. With that said, I'm excited to get started and introduce Jason Prokopic, Phamakon COO. Jason will give you a brief summary of how and why Phamakon decided to enlist the expertise of Mark and his staff. Jason?
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for all of you joining us today on this great Thursday. A little bit of background. The upper management at Phamakon Pharmaceuticals decided about 6 or 7 weeks ago that we should look to an outsourcing company to provide some consultation for our pharmaceutical business and help us deal with the FDA and the 483s and just generally improve our quality and compliance as well as procedures. And so we looked and found Mark and Bob, and we were happy to bring them on about 5 weeks ago formally to really just to make Phamakon Pharmaceuticals a better place and to improve on already sound procedures and policies and make things better. And so we're going to have Mark today talk about kind of the remediation plan that we went through. He's going to provide general information that is relevant regardless whether you use Phamakon or not, and hopefully answer any questions outstanding. So I'll turn it over to Mark at this point, and he can go from there.
Thank you, Tony and Jason. My name is Mark Westerman, and as Jason just mentioned, I have Marketing USA LLC. Marketing came out of the names Marketing, IT, and Engineering. That's why it's intentionally misspelled, for those of you who are wondering. The bad news first, 503Bs are being inspected just like Big Pharma. The good news, regs should be evolving to right size for this type of pharmacy operation. Even better news, we as an industry will get there and this industry will survive. And the best news here at Phamakon is that we've resumed sterile compounding as of 5/9/16. That's not a small feat. A couple other things before we get into the slides. Number one, I will not read all bullet points, so don't tweet Tony and tell him for me to read every bullet point. You guys are busy, and you know there's an hour-long test at the end of this, so we want to leave plenty of time for that. I'm just kidding. It should not take anyone any time because there is no test. Everyone who attends will, in effect, pass this webinar. The things we say today, if we mention the words Phamakon, it's applicable probably to any other compound pharmacy 503B, whether it be outsourced or inside of a hospital. These things that we're going to talk about, they just need to be looked at for any such facility. Housekeeping, can everyone hear me? If not, please speak up now because I'm not going to be changing.
They're muted.
They're muted? Okay. We'll send you a note if there's anything that presents a difficulty there. Beyond the activities that we've done already, we're looking at things that the FDA might want to look at again when they come back, and they will visit your facility and they will visit this facility. Again, we've triaged that to say what are the things that we ought to be continuing to look at in the next 30 to 60 days, things that are more medium priority for the next 60, 120 days, and then lower priorities this Q4 and next year. That's a risk-based approach, and that is something FDA looks for in any compliance action or measure. Their documents are not prescriptive. They don't tell you specifically how to do something. They're not even really things that you must follow. It's a matter of you must be aware of them and then make sure that you have rationale for why you follow or do not follow them in the spirit that it's presented. Another couple things, as Jason mentioned, we are an independent firm. I'm not influenced by management on any of the gap analysis or audit that we have performed. He could fire me tomorrow if he wanted to, but we're going to tell them what we see, and they're listening very intently, and we appreciate that. Another thing that you'll learn about 503Bs and how it's similar to anything else that is regulated in any way, shape, or form by the FDA is we do not control their website. We can respond, and we have, in our observation, Pharmakon has responded in a timely manner to 483s in the past. But when those responses get posted is beyond the control of either Pharmakon or us as consultants. The responses have been supplied for, a couple of months now, and some of those things are still not published. But Jason and Tony and the entire Pharmakon team are very, very intent on listening to your requests. If you are not getting enough information to accompany an order, just let them know, because they are more than willing to share with environmental monitoring, potency, and stability type tests. I will avoid being cute. This is not stand-up comedy today. This is serious business, because we're in the world of saving people's lives or enhancing their lives, and I take that seriously, as all of you do. I've already mentioned risk base, so I will move on to the first slide, who we are. It's great to be here after the past 4 to 6 weeks, but I can assure you that no 503B wants to be in that mode. You really want to be compounding your pharmacy medications, and that is why we have attacked this so aggressively. Bob and I have experience with Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Sandoz, Hospira, Hoffman La Roche, CSL, Catalent. I even spent some time with First Data Bank, who's one of the publishers of drug and drug dosing information for pharmacists, physicians, and hospitals. So we know this space well. We've performed a number of gap analyses. We've done remediation planning and execution after warning letters, 483s, and consent decrees. It's never pretty. There is not a path that you can follow unless you create it yourself. If you ask the FDA a question, they may not even provide an answer. USP provides much better science rationale than the FDA will. ISPE, the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers, gives great engineering insight. Regardless of the size of your 503B, you own your facility, your utilities, your process equipment, your people when they're on the payroll, and the products that you manufacture or compound. So again, ignorance cannot be an excuse. The FDA doesn't care the size or lack thereof. They just want you to have a quality system of systems in place. So we can also help with risk assessments, standard operating procedures, and the most important is corrective actions, preventive actions. If we find something wrong, the firm looks to whether to accept or reject, and then how to prevent the reoccurrence of that. The next slide regarding goals. Please listen closely, because these will be on that test that Tony's going to provide. How to improve the QA process under CGMP. Why is little c a little c? It's because it stands for current. And they don't say GMP 8, GMP 9, GMP 10, they just say C. So it's up to you to get the right version of the CFR Part 11. It's a blue and white pamphlet. And if you don't have at least one person in your organization with a Part 20, CFR 21, Part 11, 210, 211, you need to have somebody on your staff, because you need to be looking at those for guidance. Because what they are trying to do, and the FDA is not the enemy here, we're not painting that whatsoever. We all want to build quality in. We need to be really, really good at detection, yes, if something has gone wrong, but we have to be even better at building quality in so that we prevent something from happening in the first place. It's better, cheaper, faster that way. You avoid rework, and you must measure in order to manage. So what is a remediation plan? Why is it important responding to the FDA? Number one here was we wanted to help Pharmakon, a quality company, quality systems, to get back to production. It might be in your facility to build a new process after blowing up the old. It might be you've acquired a company and you need to merge two companies together, and they've got dissimilar systems in place. So regardless, in that remediation plan, there's going to be an audit, a gap analysis, recommendations, and moving from your current state to a future state. And that future state should be better, cheaper, and faster than where you are today. And if you don't have a remediation plan, the FDA will look at you with some skepticism because it doesn't appear that you have a state of control. They want it pre-planned. They don't want to see how well you can tap dance or react. They want to see how you have already anticipated what could go wrong. The Pharmakon Pharmaceutical Remediation Plan, again, was to return to production after successfully executing the plan, which has happened, and as of 5/9, Jason and his team announced to customers that they were back in sterile compounding business. And then also, what is the importance of the ongoing review of policies and procedures to comply with the FDA regulations? Number one, the blue and white book to which I referenced, 21 CFR, is always changing. There's interim guidances right now for 503Bs. There's USP 797. And your own business itself could change. You might go from mostly manual to more automated. You can't do that without having quality built in, showing a state of control and qualified activities. So do what they say, your SOPs, and you're not doing it for the FDA, you're doing it to continuously improve. Any questions so far, Tony?
Nope.
Okay. We'll move on then from the goals. Next slide is CGMP and QA process improvement. We've mentioned 210, 211, and they basically are hand in glove tied together. One is kind of a summary and 211's much more detailed, but it's down to what kind of HVAC do you have, what kind of laminar flow do you have HEPA filters. These are things that are not for the faint at heart. You really need someone who's a facility manager or engineer in that role to work with compliance and operations. You've got to have calendars and schedules for preventive maintenance and that type of thing. So that's what the CFR does, is tell you that thou should consider these things to build up your quality systems. They are somewhat ambiguous, but your firm owns your risk assessment and your risk tolerance. They are generic, not to Pharmakon. They are universal to anyone who's doing business in this space. So the FDA observations and recommendations themselves, typically they flow from 483 observations when there's site inspections going on, and those can roll up into a warning letter. Warning letters, if unheeded, 483s, if unheeded, will end up with a U.S. Marshal at your doorstep, and they will lock your facility, they will cut you off a cell phone, they will escort you out of your office. It's serious business. Packages ready to ship for FedEx will be halted. People will not be able to work in your facility when a consent decree is in place. So all of us should take preventative measures to plan in advance how to avoid 483s or to respond to them quickly, communicate with the FDA, avoid warning letters, and certainly, above all, avoid a consent decree. So the effort that Pharmakon has taken has been based primarily on the assertion by the FDA that there could be an assumed lack of sterility. The lack of sterility was traced back to their concern over environmental monitoring. Well, we've looked at that, and I'm telling you, this company has hit every one of their SOPs. They've trained people that, daily, weekly on procedures that needed to be tightened and improved. They've changed some cleaning and sanitizing agents so that they make sure that they're getting the right 4 weeks of one sanitizing agent regimen, etc., before moving on to the next. And most importantly, I would tell you, is they are working very closely with their independent lab here on site. It's not somewhere they have to send off to and have multiple days delay. It's right here at the Pharmakon facility here in Noblesville, Indiana, and they are getting quick turnarounds on environmental monitoring and potency before a product's batch is released. Also, they are following up every day with those same labs for any sterility and one other environmental monitoring test that comes back after the product is released. So moving on to the next slide, compliance. What we're trying to emphasize here is that you plan or be planned. When the FDA comes and inspects, they can give you a white glove test and have absolutely no 483s. Certainly we could go back and say some of the things they've done to 503Bs has been unfair because people were not aware that they were going to fully need to comply to USP 797 as well as 503B interim guidance, as well as the 21 CFR parts 11, 210, and 211. But you've got to have your processes in control. That means you're repeatable, reliable. It's kind of like the definition of insanity. If you're doing different things each week and expecting the same results, you might as well go to Vegas and play the odds because you're relying on luck. These kind of companies, like Pharmakon, have to be good and lucky. If you're not, you're just asking for trouble. You've got to measure it. You've got to have metrics. Things don't go into a black box, it's input, process, output. No. It's input, it's verification of certificates from the vendors saying that it's, the right kind of material, etc. It's the right kind of process for check-in and staging into inventories and first in, first out planning so you have the right expiry dates on supplies and products and so forth. So you're looking for predictable results. So that's your goal is I know what I should get from my process or sub-process. And then if not, if there's a deviation means someone failed to follow an SOP or you've had an out of specification where the number of CFUs exceeds the number that should be on glove tips or other parts of gowning and garbing. But bottom line is deviations don't just happen and get logged somewhere. You've got to get to root cause analysis and find out what happened. What do we do with the example that's in front of us? How can we retrain, continually improve our process, and not have this happen again? If you're out of control, you're asking for a catastrophic failure. So where we are right now with Pharmakon is, and not just for them, but for anyone, you need to have a master plan of your facility. I mean, there's some things like shrubs and parking lots and things like that that are just not that important, and you can deem the maintenance accordingly. You can have, things that are direct impact, indirect, no impact to the product. But you need to make sure that it's exhaustive and that you have provided the rationale about your facilities, utilities, computerized systems. Lots of people think if you just automate something, all sense of control and documentation can go away. Nothing could be further from the truth. You get into more scrutiny with electronic records. You have to have more documentation that you're hitting the file right and having the right accesses, and people can do only those things that their job should allow them to do, etc. And as I said, we've even taken it down to the cleaning agents procedures here. Pharmakon has brought in an independent microbiologist to observe gowning, and collectively we're all looking at things like temperatures, relative humidities, differential pressures, the differences between clean rooms and hallways and ante rooms and in and out of material. The flow of air has got to be such that we have no surprises. At this point, we want the air in clean rooms to be positive so they can blow out as opposed to blow in. You don't want impurities getting into product that patients are going to rely upon. So for purposes of a gap check, we encourage you to basically set up process requirements. What is the process supposed to do? What are the outcomes? And if you have parameters like that, the big pharma uses this, and they've got the engineers and people to do failure modes, effects, etc. that'll just wear you out. But for the right level of detail, you can get someone into your organization to say, what should my critical parameters be? It might be as simple as saying relative humidity needs to be between 30 and 60%, period. And then have a way to measure that and have a backup way to measure it in case the primary method fails. Same thing with temperatures. You don't want 80 degrees in a facility that's supposed to be doing clean room oral morphine or higher than that, or sterile compounding. You don't want to have a differential pressure that's outside of a certain range. So it's very important that you assemble your playbook of this is how our office must run, our facility must run. And you need to communicate that to your team, because if people don't know what to expect, they may just learn to push a button that says, ignore, ignore, ignore. An alert or an alarm serves a purpose. An alert will tell you before it goes out of range, so you should be checking it, whether it might be a pre-filter that needs changing or a scale that needs calibrating. You just do not ignore those. So you're building a quality of culture, rank and file. And I do know that the term is thrown around loosely that quality is everyone's job, and it truly is in one respect, but people that are closest to the FDA and the USPs need to make sure that we're continuously conveying new information, GMP refresher courses, etc., so that everyone is attuned to that and they don't get used to routinely doing things just because that's the way we do it here. You need to anticipate schedules. You've got to reserve enough time for your maintenance people to do cleaning and environmental monitorings and HEPA checks and laminar flows. You can't be producing product 120% of the time. It will come back to haunt you. You will have recalls because you won't have any milestones where you can show the FDA or other regulators that I was good here in June, I'm good here in July, I'm good in August, and in September I've had a problem, so I can zoom in only on the issues for the month of September. Certainly that analogy is even too large. You do that on a daily and weekly basis below the monthly. The key is testing and documentation. We are rigorously seeing Pharmakon do more and more testing. They're planning more, communicating more, cleaning more, training more, and continually improving. And that's what your organization needs to do to stay above water, because competition does not grow lazy and just stop where they are. So what we're trying to do is say, when we're gone and out of here, Pharmakon and other 503B operators should know what their business is and have it all documented so that there's no question about the precision that's needed in each step. Moving on to the root cause analysis. We've talked about this some already. You just don't want to put yourself in a spot. Some deviations can be avoided by good procedures and good engineering and good facility design. You don't necessarily have to have a temperature at 68 degrees or 66 degrees. It might be a range of 64 to 68 Fahrenheit or the equivalent Celsius. But just don't put yourself in a position where you get deviation generators built into your process that don't supply any value. You want to make sure that if it fails, it's for a just reason that would require compliance and quality. Your pharmacist to look at and say, should we accept or reject this batch? And this, again, is not just for the FDA's purposes. Certainly you document it in case they come into your facility and want to look at this, but it's because you want to stop this from reoccurring in the future. And listen to your people, because they know what's broken in a process already. They know the manual workarounds that don't show in your SOPs. If you will listen to them and give them an unexpected recognition once in a while, it will lead to a better redesign for your process, and you will be head over heels where you were. So again, root cause means things like the 5 whys the fishbone Ishikawa model, etc. They're not real complicated. You don't have to get a doctorate in root cause analysis to do them. You just need someone on your staff or someone whom you can contract with who can help you do an exercise, train the trainer, and then you own it. Our remediation plan with Phamakon was started with a goal of resuming production upon completion of the remediation action plan. That was about 14 items, and they were pretty big items, but we worked round the clock, and we had guesstimated and planned that we would be through by 5/5/16, and we hit 5/9. So we're pretty pleased with that, and I think Phamakon is as well. We did a gap analysis and risk assessment of what areas might need further assessments and improvements. Because again, you know and I know that the FDA is on a tear right now. They believe that they have been chartered to look at outsourced and hospital-based compounding facilities. You're always going to have more improvements than you can make than you have resources, time, and money to do, so you have to triage those. I recommend a very simple risk analysis which says what's the severity, what's the criticality, and if you don't do this action now, is there something already in place that should catch this before it goes out the door? Every compounding pharmacy should be doing these kinds of checks, and I see them in Phamakon's SOPs, that it's a check and a double check, and then compliance is looking at documentation to make sure the package is complete. It should never be your intention to throw something over the wall and let the customer catch it. If you do that, you have no business in this business, because the medicines are just far too important to patients to play that fast and loose type of approach. You may ask why an outsider was brought in. Well, I don't work here. I live 5 miles from here, but I've traveled to 10 pharmaceutical operations all over the country, and I quickly just take the customer point of view. What do our customers need? I don't have a bias. I don't know why something is done or not done, but I will ask the questions. And I just hope that everybody will, like Phamakon, seriously look at their operations and say, we can do better, or push back because they've got a control in place already. So I think, you know, in starting to wrap this up, we're just trying to tell you, be ready with data. Subjective, anecdotal, you know, quotes off of any website you find, it's got to be fine-tuned to your organization. You don't want it to be talking about widgets when the FDA comes in here. You want to tell them about batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, and why they passed their environmentals and their potency and sterilities. So again, things will change in your operation as well. So that's why you need to continue to have an ongoing implementation and guidance. A few other things. Any questions, Tony, before I go to this more detailed page?
Not at this time.
Okay. We retested recalled batch samples, okay, because when Phamakon did a voluntary recall and a voluntary ceasing or pausing of production, they looked at the sterility, and all the sampled product was found to be sterile. And that's good information for any 503B to have, because we can understand that the FDA can hypothesize that this could happen if this is not happening. But if you in the end product are showing that it's sterile, that's definitely a good data point to have. Very, very important to all of you on the line, increase your communication with the FDA throughout the process. Before it happens, you should be talking to them with data about cleaning, environmental monitoring, production data, potency, stability. It does not help if days turn into weeks and months, because it will just accelerate the next visit. Phamakon has improved their production suite gowning materials and methods. That continues to be done even to this day, because they are very, very intent on minimizing any colony forming units on anything that might come in contact with product or scales, repeaters, and that type of thing. They're also increasing the level of environmental monitoring and documentation. They've replaced laminar flow grates and retested, recertified HEPA filters in the clean room filtrations. That was a precautionary measure, but again, we are trying to eliminate any and all possible root causes for what the FDA had hypothesized, that there might be a lack of sterility. We've also are moving to a higher level of documentation and reporting, and we've begun a parallel testing of a tablet based application to move to an electronic report retrieving system. And Tony and Jason are also potentially previewing that the information that's inside the company should be transparent. Real-time potency environmental air quality reports are being looked to be provided in a cloud-type program. Also room and product sterility reports to be captured in those same type systems. More from that side from Tony and Jason in just a bit.
And Mark, I'll
You have an update?
One second.
Excellent.
Our plan and our goal is to have this done in the next 60 days or so. But if there, obviously, we might run into hiccups here and there with some computer programming. So, but I want everybody to know that this is a top priority, and we are looking at having this done in the short term.
Excellent. You certainly want it secured because you don't want client A having access to client B records or vice versa. Thank you, Tony. As we continue to move toward wrapping up, this is an ongoing partnership with Phamakon in this microcosm, and in your own world it should be an ongoing partnership as well with your independent consultants. We made a commitment to stay on site for the next 3 months and complete this facility master plan and prepare for other things that we want to see improved, both Phamakon management and us as consultants. And then train the Phamakon people to be able to do this work themselves. This should become a self-service shop in many respects, and then augment that with just external reviews periodically, once a year, that type of thing. So I am very pleased to say that our partnership has delivered results, and I want to quote somebody just quickly. William Edwards Deming was a famous quality guy who went to Japan and taught the Japanese how to make a car when Detroit owned the world. His quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, were, if you focus on quality, you'll get to cost savings. If you're thinking as a 503B that you can focus on cost savings, I can tell you, you're not going to get to quality. You'll probably not remain competitive in the business.
Mark, we do have a question.
Okay.
How was sterility validated, turbidity, or other method?
Okay, I'm going to defer that to our environmental monitoring and lab folks. I am not a lab person, and the sterility is the part that comes after the batch is released. It takes up to 14 days.
Yeah, and this is Jason, and I could surely get a direct answer from Caprice, but our quality and compliance director, we were shipping at risk for sterility. It's a 14-day process. The lab does check it daily for any changes, and if something would appear, if they would alert us immediately. So that 14-day process, it's being checked daily for specifics on each product, but we don't have that data until 14 days later. And so I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but we can surely get a definite answer for that and get it sent out to everybody.
Yeah, due to the timing, a product could be released because it has acceptable environmental monitoring and potency, but then it would and could be and should be recalled if there was any hiccup due to a sterility. Sterility generally is based upon more of the room itself and not only to a given batch.
Well, the environmental monitoring is based on the room,
right?
And the sterility is individual products specifically to that product.
Okay.
So that takes 14 days to show a response.
Excellent.
I hope that helps a little bit, but we can provide more clarity if needed.
Okay. The commitment is to continue to improve in the future, and I have gotten marching orders from Paul, Jason, and Caprice. They don't want to meet compliance regulatory recommendations, They want to exceed them. They want to be 100% transparent of their sterile compounding processes. I believe, in fact, even Tony, you and Jason are telling people, please come by and visit. Is that not correct?
Yes, with or without an appointment, we welcome and encourage everybody to come by the facility and take a look and ask questions and see with your own eyes what's going on here.
Fantastic. And then, as we've already mentioned before, they are dedicated to providing better access to the batch-specific lab results. And as Jason said, he will get a more complete answer on the sterility question that was raised. I think, let's see, the only final words I would like to say is that the regulatory compliance landscape for 503Bs, it's partly cloudy right now because there's lots of this 210 CFR observations being placed on many 503Bs, but we are optimistic that the FDA will look at USP 797, move forward with the interim 503B guidance to make it a permanent guidance, and therefore have a more solid footing from which companies like Phamakon and your company can seek to obtain compliance and quality. Thank you for your time.